So let's move to Erin Moorman. Erin, could you join us? And you've been really helpful, not only in this project, but also working with the 1908 project and talking about your own experience, your thought, your theology. But tonight you want to talk about the connection of intimacy and truth. What do you have in mind?
Um, well, if you recall from my essay, I spent the majority of my life not knowing that I am asexual. And my husband and I had been married almost 20 years before I discovered that. And prior to that discovery, there were always certain conversations where that would just leave us frustrated. And we both understood that we were both trying to figure out what the problem was, but we thought we assumed that we were coming from the same perspective, the same experiences, and the same understanding of things. And it wasn't until I discovered that I'm asexual that everything became clear, and we weren't speaking from the same perspectives. So it was a lack of intimacy that was unintentional. And once the truth of my orientation was known, then the intimacy was able to increase, because we were finally able to understand that we weren't coming from the same place and talk through these things. And we understood that now there are new things that we can ask because we didn't know that they were there to ask before. And
yeah, that's excellent.
So it's the intimacy was hindered because we didn't have, we weren't as truthful as we could be, and not, because of any intention. So when I say intimacy requires truth, a lot of Nazarenes who are not affirming, some of them insist that you can't even identify as LGBTQ. Some people who are like, okay, you can identify as gay or bi, but you can't live that way. But even with that perspective, they have further issues with people who identify as trans or who transition. But if they aren't able to be honest about who they are, then the church can't offer any kind of intimate relationship. We can't offer actual fellowship. I remember when I was growing up, my Christian teachers would talk about, they would present the heart as a home that had lots of, each of those rooms had doors. And were we willing to allow Christ, were we willing to open the door to this room and let Christ in there and have him, and each one, and are there any doors in the home of your heart that you're not willing to open to Christ? I don't know that they meant it this way, but they were talking about not only discipleship, but they were talking about relationship. Like, how intimate are we willing to be with Christ? And if we have to close off any part of who we are, we were always told when we do that, that hinders our relationship with Christ. If we force people to do that by telling them you're not allowed to tell us that you're gay or that you're trans or that you're, pansexual or intersex, whatever it is, then we are forcing them to hide a part of who they are, and we are not allowing them to be intimate and to have the kind of fellowship that we're supposed to have as a Christian family.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing and being vulnerable about this. As I think about your story and your contribution, I think a lot of people, when they think about queer issues, they don't think about the A in LGBTQIA plus. In other words, I don't think folks think about the asexual issues. How do you, what's the right word? When you think about that conversation and lumping these things all together under one label, queer, or putting all the initials up there, how do you find people respond to you when you say, I'm a part of that? My difference is asexuality.
Um, they're mostly intrigued because asexuality, and the A stands for asexual, agender, and oh, there's a third one I'm blanking on, and I apologize. But asexuality can be kind of on a spectrum because there's something called the split attraction model. And so I don't experience sexual attraction, but sexual attraction is not the only kind of attraction that's out there. And the easiest way that I think it makes sense to explain it to people is, I grew up in the church and we were always like, well, there's different kinds of love. There's eros and there's philos and there's agape. And of course, agape was the one we were all wanting, to aspire to. So, and we understand the concept of recognizing that someone's attractive, like they're a good looking person, but no, I'm not interested in them. There's no romantic attraction. So we understand those concepts, but there are some people who legitimately don't experience sexual attraction. There are people who don't experience romantic attraction. There are people who experience romantic attraction and not sexual, like me. There are people who experience sexual attraction, but not romantic attraction. You can be heteroromantic or homoromantic, and both of those people be asexual. Mostly I find that people are like, oh, I didn't realize that an asexual person could have intimate relationships with people. I didn't realize that asexual people wanted relationships with people. So yeah, it's not one of the letters that's talked about very much.
Right. Yeah.
And some of the hardships that some people in the asexual community experience, I'm thankful I never have. But yeah, it's each letter of the alphabet, has their own particular and unique struggles. So
Yeah. Thanks. Well, we're running out of time here, but I want to make sure that I alert people to a couple of essays that you wrote that are posted on the lovingnazarenes.com website. In the last 30 seconds, can you give us a quick summary of those two so that people will know what they're looking for when they go to the site to read your material?
yeah, so when the 1908 Project started talking about their petition, I felt as I had started thinking about this issue, it was clear to me that the Nazarene core values, being Christian and missional and holiness people, aligned perfectly with being affirming. And so one of the essays deals with that topic. The other topic is it discusses the Wesleyan quadrilateral, and it doesn't go in depth, but it's giving examples of the types of conversations that the Church of the Nazarene needs to have, walking through each of the 4 points of the quadrilateral and saying that, if we discuss this, these are the reasons why reason shows that Nazarenes can be affirming, and tradition shows Nazarenes can be affirming, and so on and so forth. And the one thing I hear on the last one is, well, you're elevating experience above all of the other parts of the quadrilateral. And it's like, no, we're trying to get you to act like experience is actually a part of the quadrilateral and stop ignoring it. It's not enough to say, yes, it's part of it, but we're not going to listen to it.
Right.
Pretend that it's we can't pretend to listen to it when we aren't willing to.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for both those articles, for your essay on the book, and for sharing your story and being vulnerable. I think it's helpful to many people and an important piece in this whole conversation. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you for having me.